I'm really happy to be here today and to have this opportunity to speak with you. You're a tough crowd, I can already tell. As a researcher, I really value couching my research in the community and in the schools, and do hope that my research contributes to positive outcomes, not only for families of children with disabilities, but also in their classrooms, teachers, in their larger communities as well. And so this is an exciting opportunity, but also I think a challenge, as Jack pointed out during lunch, a challenge for researchers to collaborate better in a way that actually makes our research more meaningful to what you do. So I just want to start out by saying that is a goal of mine as well, and the extent to which you see areas of need that in your own districts, in your own CSAs, and wish to talk to me about those, I would be happy to have those conversations as well, and I'm excited about those kind of collaborations. So today I thought that I would present you with, oops, there we go. So I'm going to give you an overview of my research, my lines of research, so that you can get a sense of the kinds of scholarship that I engage in and whether or not you see some areas of shared interest there. Background about positive behavior supports and parent involvement in positive behavior supports, particularly at the tertiary level of behavioral intervention for children that have serious challenging behavior. No, I do not want to update. I'm going to close it. Okay. And then I'm going to share with you some preliminary findings of a recent study that was completed with a small number of parents in their homes of kids with autism and the findings of that. And then provide you with some implications for practice and future research. So this is an overview of my research. My scholarship focuses on the assessment and treatment of serious challenging behavior for individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities. Specifically, my research focuses on preventing the development of challenging behavior, community-based research to develop socially relevant and effective assessment and treatment strategies for children that are often difficult to serve in our schools and communities due to the long-lasting nature and seriousness of their challenging behavior, and identifying practices that promote implementation and treatment adherence or fidelity over time by educators and family members. In the field of applied behavior analysis and special education, I really believe that we have the technology to change child behavior, to train teachers in effective evidence-based practices, and to prepare parents to support their children. What we're lacking as a field is really what are the best ways to support educators and parents over time, to have them implement these strategies with fidelity, without giving up or throwing in the towel after a difficult week. And so that's this is one of my primary lines of research. And so today, talking about video teleconferencing, I see it as one tool, one possible tool, for possibly reaching families that are difficult to serve in rural communities or communities where there's a shortage of behavior specialists, as well as a practice that may promote implementation and the delivery of education in those settings. And then identifying individual treatment components of evidence-based interventions. So really looking for the kernel of an intervention package that gets you the most bang for your buck. So that if we're looking at cost-effective ways to improve child outcomes in schools and in homes, what is the most important thing to train teachers in? And what's the most important thing to prepare students in the classroom and parents to be able to implement? So, as we all know, PBS really focuses on a prevention science framework of looking at challenging behavior through and enhancing the capacity of schools, families, and communities to design effective environments that improve the contextual fit between evidence-based practices and the settings in which we're going to use those strategies. Now, I point out schools, families, and communities because what I'm going to share with you is that although minimally PBS is implemented with family awareness and desired objectives and asking them about the contextual fit or social validity of strategies in mind, What we don't have is really a science of how to best involve parents in these school-wide efforts. What we do know is that parent involvement in positive behavior supports is of great benefit, irregardless of a child's disability. When parents implement behavior support strategies, they often judge intervention strategies with improved acceptability scores. They find strategies more acceptable if they've learned to use them themselves, and are more likely to implement those strategies over time. They can also help us to reinforce child skills, which is particularly important for the population that I work with, because they often have challenging behavior across environments, so both at home and at school. So the need to actually learn skills that generalize from each of those settings to the other is quite important. And parents as teachers, particularly in the area of autism, have definitely increased the quantity and quality of intervention, which is often an area of need in schools in terms of, providing applied behavior analysis interventions, providing the minimal level of intervention necessary to improve child outcomes, and parents can really assist us in reaching those goals. And obviously for potential indirect benefits to families of reducing serious challenging behaviors. Now although there's a benefit of parent involvement in positive behavior support through the assessment all the way to the intervention, this may be particularly important for parents of children with significant disabilities. Parents of children with developmental disabilities who engage in challenging behavior report higher levels of stress, caregiver burden, than parents of children with developmental disabilities who do not engage in challenging behavior. And there's evidence to suggest that parents' stress can in turn impact challenging behavior, meaning that parent stress serves as a setting event that makes it more likely that they respond to their child's behavior in a way that occasions or precipitates challenging behavior. And then the challenging behavior in turn increases parent stress, right? So we get into this cycle of negativity there. Now, just from my own background in consulting with families and working with families of children with significant disabilities, parents dealing with serious challenging behaviors often desire strategies that they can use at home. They're often going to their school, they're often going to their child's teacher and saying, can you help me out? We're having problems with toileting, or we're having problems with transitions. And oftentimes this is left to the individual teacher-parent relationship rather than being embedded into school-wide positive behavior supports. Now, it's been recommended by Lucian and others that there are 3 actions to improve services for children with significant challenging behavior. And these are to develop and implement home-based positive behavior support systems, expand analysis and intervention to focus on family routines, and to teach professionals to build collaborative partnerships. Now, for the children that I tend to work with, they're in the tertiary level of support in the school-wide positive behavior support system. They need specialized, individualized interventions that are often requiring multi-component behavior support plans based upon functional behavior assessments and oftentimes an experimental functional analysis. So schools are, for the most serious challenging behavior for these individuals, schools are often left to consult with an outside consultant at a very high rate of pay oftentimes. And those consultants are often difficult to locate. And it's often difficult, particularly if you're trying to get them to come to a rural setting, to actually make the drive out, right? So my own work as a behavior analyst has shown me that without appropriate treatment, and also research backs this up, that these serious behaviors often persist over time, leading to the need for long-term assessment and treatment for families and for schools. Now, there are some specific trends in the positive behavior support literature, and I think that these probably reflect what is happening in schools to some degree, and that although in school-wide positive behavior supports we talk about how important it is for us to involve families and to collaborate with them, Participation has been limited in a number of ways. Parents are most often involved in school-wide positive behavior supports as members on planning teams, for implementing and evaluating behavioral supports as part of the team, for teaching school-wide expectations at home, and in volunteering in their school. Now, although not all families desire a time-intensive or a role-intensive participation in school-wide positive behavior support efforts, some families would definitely benefit from more parent education. And the proposed standardized model of school-based positive behavior supports doesn't include teaching families how to implement behavior support strategies at home. And neither do descriptions of school-wide positive behavior support teams in the literature. So the literature as a whole has really focused on describing the need for family collaboration rather than the how. And this how may be especially necessary for families of children with significant disabilities. Behavioral parent training is really something that has been used to great efficacy with this population, but in many ways it's outside of the school-wide behavior support literature and outside of the school-wide positive behavior support practices. What we do know is that behavioral parent training, or what I'll call parent education from here on out, is that changes in parent behavior result in decreased challenging behavior. And it's grounded in applied behavior analysis and social learning theory, and really thinks about, proposes that parents be active change agents. Now we know that not all families, of course, will desire to have this role in their child's life or their child's education, but for those that do, it would be good to know how best to do this. So there's a lot of evidence supporting the use of BPT or parent education, particularly in the area of autism and intellectual disabilities. And we know that parents with instruction, modeling, whether that's in vivo modeling or video modeling of strategies, as well as immediate performance feedback on how they're doing implementing those strategies, can really, they can learn a number of quite complex skills. They can learn to implement multi-component behavior support plans that include antecedent and setting event strategies to prevent or minimize the occurrence of challenging behavior. They can teach their child new ways to communicate, to replace the challenging behavior, and they can implement consequence-based strategies like extinction and reinforcement-based strategies. But the extent to which this ideal happens, this is a diagram that's based on conjoint behavioral consultation, which basically says that, you know, if we're going to do functional behavior assessment, implementation of a behavior support plan to promote the success of that student, we should do it across environments. We should really have the consultation occur both in the home and in the school. Obviously, there are a number of barriers to doing this. The first barrier from the parent side of things is individual and family level variables that may affect their participation in intervention or education, such as depression, single parent status, low socioeconomic status, and then system level variables, such as shortage of behavior specialists, such as that we have in Wisconsin, geographic, where they reside in the state, so winter weather may affect their ability to travel to parent education that's being provided by WeFacets, for instance. Cost, of course, childcare for families, and scheduling difficulty. These are the same kind of issues that influence the use of intensive performance feedback to teachers in school settings. So if we look at this map, this is obviously a map of Wisconsin, but the dark green areas are rural, and the darker it gets green, the more rural it is. So the yellow is urban, so we can see that Wisconsin is primarily a rural state. And that combined with the shortage of behavior support specialists or positive behavior specialists within school settings leaves some families and some schools at a double disadvantage, which I think is something that you're all aware of. So in other fields, particularly the healthcare field and in providing education to teachers, telecommunication technologies such as video conferencing, smartphones have been used to alleviate these shortages and to provide the kind of time-intensive performance feedback that we know educators and families need in order to implement strategies with fidelity. And a growing body of research in special education has shown that it can be effective in special education settings as well. So in my own research, what I'm going to present to you today is the results of a fourth study in this line of research. We started out in classroom settings, providing consultation via video teleconferencing, desktop video teleconferencing equipment to be exact, laptop computers, external web cameras, broadband internet provided by the school, to provide consultation to teachers who are learning how to implement functional behavior assessments. In one specialized school, functional analysis of challenging behavior when a functional behavior assessment did not yield a conclusive result for that child, those children rather. And in the latest study, actually providing performance feedback via video conferencing to 6 teachers in a classroom setting while school was going on around their area, their class had continued, for teachers of children with autism and serious challenging behavior, to help them to assess their child's challenging behavior, their student's challenging behavior, and to implement the functional analysis procedures correctly. Now, using this video teleconferencing equipment enabled us to provide immediate performance feedback to help them problem solve behavior problems as they arose during the assessment process. And they were able to learn the skills they needed to learn in a mean of 90 minutes. So in a fairly short amount of time with this kind of behavioral consultation model of interrupting them when they made an error, asking them what they did wrong, asking them to correct it, and then praising them for what they did correctly, they were able to implement these strategies consistently. And the skills maintained for a mean of 5 weeks, but then it dropped off thereafter. It was something telling about how much you need to overtrain in order to get a maintenance of response, or how much reinforcement a teacher actually needs to continue using those strategies. And the teachers rated the video teleconferencing as satisfactory and effective.